the Black diaspora relates through food. To go to a grocery store and the North community in Minneapolis, like the closest Cup Foods was closed. So like when you think about transportation, like they can't get to a grocery store that easy, and so there were all these food drives and things like that. And now I feel like I'm kind of talking in circles, but either way, like through a lot of those conversations, we decided that we want to impact through food and community and connectedness.
Welcome to another edition of the Work and Play podcast. I'm your host, Ariel Young, and I have my wonderful friend here, Ms. Agu Itebe, here to join me. Hey. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
We have spitball conversations all the time, so I'm pretty confident that we're just gonna like have this conversation and like they're gonna be able to keep up with
I hope
this.
so.
So I'm not even worried. So would you like to introduce yourself to the folks?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Agu. I work in retail at Target. I just actually got a new position at Target about 2 months ago. So I currently work in the retail space. It's a lead store merchant position, which, you know, I'm not going to go into all that detail, but I know Ari actually because we both used to work at Target. So that was years ago in a past life. But I'm really excited to this podcast because I think we've been on just two very different journeys, even starting at Target. So just kind of picking up on where we've left off, how our journeys have gone differently, and what we've grown with and how we've learned stuff. So
yeah, all of that. So on the Work and Play podcast, I get to interview my friends on like all the cool stuff that they're doing, the highs and lows of their career journeys, and then learn a little bit about how they got to where they are. So I think we should start where we both were at Target. So Target headquarters is where we met, and we both were transplants. Mm-hmm. So it's funny how we just evolved into more like a family, I want to say.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. So what was your journey to getting to Target? How did you even get there?
Good question. So before I was at Target, I was a teacher actually for a few years. So I was in Houston for 3 years teaching middle school math. And I learned a ton about myself teaching. I think it's probably best for the kids and for me to leave education, but I honestly wanted something completely different. So I actually got my degree in business management with an emphasis in finance. And so when I went to Teach for America, because that's the program I did, I thought I was only going to be there for 2 years, but I actually stayed on an extra year because I enjoyed it so much. But in that last year, I feel like it took 3 years for me to realize, like, hey, you know what? There's something in this career choice that I don't know if I can emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically give. Mm-hmm. And I thought I was hurting the kids. And so I decided to leave that career and then go into what I actually got my degree in. So one of my mentors at the Teach for America program talked about Target and things like that. She had a connection, and I knew that I don't think I could just go into any corporate company. And so I was like, kind of looking at the list of options. Okay, so where can I go where I won't feel completely like I'm giving my life away to the man kind of situation. And so I decided that Target was the place to be. And it's actually wild because even after the events of the last year, George Floyd's murder, it's wild to see how proud I am to still work at Target. I thought I was only going to be there a couple of years just to, again, start my corporate career, take some lessons and move on. Yeah. And now that I've been in this company, I made a good decision, but I can't imagine working at this point in time of my life, working for another corporate entity that doesn't care. And they're all corporate entities, right? They only care so much. It's about profit, but I'm very proud to work at where I work.
Yeah, you gave us a lot in one, but you know, what's funny is you got to Target, it was a good move in the process. And so I got to Target through MLT. So I got a chance to like interview Target before I really went. And I thought, okay, this culture is really cool because you got the other companies like the Booz Allens of the world where like, we work 70 hours a week. And I'm like, nah. So you found your way to Target, which was a really good fit. And then you said you had a list of like companies that you were looking at. So how did you make your decision? And then like, did you talk to anyone, or
Great question.
Was it off your like heart? How did you make that decision?
I mean, honestly, like I would say I didn't think much with my heart back then, but like looking back, it was all heart. It really was. Like I had a very short list, a couple of companies that I was looking for, but then also, and I hope that I'm never in this position again. I wanted to get out of teaching so badly. I was willing to like that's why my list was so short. I was willing to look at, okay, so what is good about a couple of companies? Okay, Target. They don't seem like the trashiest one. They seem like they have some good values, and okay, let me talk to a couple of people. When I say a couple of people, like 2 people.
Okay.
And make sure that I just was comfortable in the environment, and very similar to you, where I in those conversations, they didn't seem like they were just working their employees to the core. Like it was okay. So there seems to be some work-life balance, which I did not have as a teacher, and so I was really looking for something that I did not have in my teaching career, at least like I said, work-life situation. So that's how Target made the list and became the only one on the list.
Yeah. Now there are 2 things that stand out for me at Target. And I have not necessarily found. I've created my own ecosystem here in Atlanta, but Target is the one who set the foundation. One was definitely the corporate responsibility piece. Because the first thing, even though in my 2.5, 3 years at Target in different roles, we only volunteer. I only got to do one real volunteer thing, but I just thought like that was such a part of Target's culture. And the other thing that I love is those coffee chats. So I feel like I drank way more water than I did. What's your favorite thing working at Target?
Ooh, my favorite thing working at Target, the connections that I've made. I mean, you even talk about how we met at Target, we became family. So Target as a company, great, I can speak about so many things, but it gives the opportunity to make genuine connections, like at work, but then even outside of work. I feel like every team that I've been on has been very different, but I don't think I've ever felt displaced, out of place for the most part. But there's like, I know of friends that have been in weddings because it's hard. I think it's so community and relational that it makes it such an easy place to work. Because I don't think I could have survived in Minneapolis without Target, genuinely.
And guys, if you have not been in Minneapolis, so the one thing I hated was the snow.
Oh yeah, girl.
That's probably the worst thing. And if it wasn't for you guys, I don't think I would have made it either. So thank you so much for being in my life. It's been, you are honestly, so everybody that I've had on the podcast so far have been part of my work and play journey. But I just told a story. I was natural, and I used to come to work with those like pink curls. So I would wake up in the morning, take my curls out, and then I would get to work like, I don't know if this turned out the way it was supposed to. And you would literally say, meet me in the bathroom. At whatever time, if you had a meeting, like I got a meeting, but meet me in the bathroom. And then you would literally come and like take apart my curls, and I had no work.
Try. Like, okay, so we're gonna, oh my goodness, yes. Hopefully no one walks in.
Oh my gosh. So when you think about work and play, when I think about work and play, I think about those moments. I think about the moments that we're working from home and we're like spitballing philosophical ideas. But like, what comes up for you when you think work and play?
I think exactly that. It's how like I can like with the relations that I've had, even outside of Target, just like the people the friends that I have from college, we can kind of go into this kind of like, I think of what's called like the Venn diagram, where we have the work and the play. And then literally like, you can just kind of go in between the lines and we can talk about racism and anti-racism. We can talk about our work environments. We can talk about what's happening personally, our dating lives. And it really just kind of goes, just meshes in and out. Like the conversations I think with my friends are just amazing. And so that work and play balance, but then also like bringing like work home and then home to work and then all that kind of fun stuff, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. There's in the work and play, there's balance, there's overlap, there's meshing, like all of that stuff. For me, I'm building a life that is work and play. And so this is an example of me just being able to enjoy my friends, but even have like life-changing, world-changing conversations while I get paid. You know what I mean? Like
that's real. That is so real.
So
it's wild that you say that, because I remember a point in my life, it was actually when I first got to Target, because teaching was so exhausting. There was like no delineation between my work and my play. All my friends were teachers. All my teachers were my friends, and so I wanted a very clear-cut line. That's part of the reason why I went to corporate America. Like, okay, I want to be able to leave my work at home, that's not what happened. I want to be able to leave my work at home, I leave my computer, and then I got to Target, and my friends became my coworkers. And so it really is like that balance word sticks out. Like that balance of like, how do you have those conversations? How do you, again, like, I forgot exactly what you said, but just like that mixing, but feeling comfortable like in whatever balance and mix you have in your individual life. And that's what I've had to learn, because there's gonna be overlap. There's gonna be overlap no matter what.
I think there should be overlap. It's not always gonna be, because especially if you're rigid, like no, work and play separate.
That's real.
But I think there should be, and I think that makes work much more livable.
Impactful even. If you care anything about what you do, you will bring it home. Absolutely. Those emotions, like the paper, like whatever, is gonna come home.
Absolutely.
You're gonna talk to it about your partner, talk to it with your partner, your friends, whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. If it is compartmentalized, I just feel like, I think as women, and the reason I mention this, I'm not gonna make this a feminist conversation, but I think we just talked about how like men compartmentalize and women don't. I think if we were to go to work and be like, let me just leave that at home, and then we don't even get to come home and talk about it, I feel like that'll be a little draining, because your work is like a part of everything. So, you know, I don't know. I appreciate being able to do that. And it's funny that you say like, you started this journey as a teacher, and then you thought you were gonna make that delineation. But you know what I didn't know? I didn't know you had a business management degree and a finance degree.
Emphasis in finance.
Emphasis in finance. So,
and what that means is really just I took more classes because we didn't have a minor in finance. And so I just took more classes to get like that grounding in finance. But I didn't want my full degree to be in finance. So,
but what did you think you were gonna do? Like when you got your degree, what did you think life was gonna be
Girl,
like?
At the age of 20, I was like, let me pick something that I think makes sense. I enjoyed business. I like the idea of business, but I honestly hadn't had a lot of experience in it. So I did internships in high school, which I don't think a lot of people do. So I did internships in high school. One major, one stood out, but it was like the business side of a law firm. And I couldn't even pinpoint exactly why I liked it, but I knew I liked being in that world. And so that's where, like, when I chose my major, it really was like, okay, so I know I don't want to do science. I don't want to do anything when it comes to literature or writing. And I enjoy the business. Like, let me dive in a little bit deeper, and then I can get the experience after college and see if I really like it. That really was my thought process. It really wasn't like I didn't have any kind of plan as I was picking out my degree and what I was going to do with either the business side or the finances. I just knew I liked numbers. I mean, I felt I like numbers. Like, I mean, I'm decent at it, right? But so I just knew that I enjoyed it, and I wanted to see where that was going to take me. No force beyond that.
But the thing about it is, you're so socially conscious. So I'm curious, from that law side, did you pull anything back from that law side that intrigued you about social awareness, legal issues, anything?
Not from that law firm. I would say I would call myself conscious, thank you, socially conscious. But I would actually say a lot of that came from, a lot of that was just, because I want to say it's learned experiences, but I wouldn't even say it came from my familial, like my family life or anything like that. I think it was just seeing what I saw around me, being aware, and then when I got to Teach for America, like being in a whole new, because it's not like so just where I'm from, or just like those friendship situations back home. It's like, oh shit, this is like everywhere. And I was so young and naive, and so going into the program, it really was like I can't leave this behind. I mean, even like when I went to the corporate field, I was giving so much as a teacher, and I felt like I was constantly giving back. That when I went, I was like, I can't leave education behind. So when I went up to Minneapolis, I was like, okay, so where can I volunteer? Like, where can I be a tutor? Where can I be a mentor? And so, like, just in a different aspect. But yeah, I mean, the socially conscious part, the empathy and the feeling tied to a community never stopped.
Did you get a chance to do very many like volunteer activities or teaching activities when you actually got to Minneapolis?
So within the first month, I was volunteering at a high school. It was over north. I don't remember the high school that I started at. It's been so long, but I tutored and mentored there for a couple of years, and then I've done different programs on and off. So pretty consistent, but different ones. But yeah, always in the tutoring, mentoring kind of avenue.
That's so interesting. Like, as much as we talk about everything, and as like, you remember when we were in Greece, and I don't remember what we were talking about, but it was a racial awareness type of conversation, and I said something about somebody. Maybe it was like Trayvon Martin. You were like, "Wait, you have an opinion?" It was like more like not like, "Oh, you have an opinion," like, "Oh, Ariel never has an opinion," but like it was more like, "Oh, Ariel, you're passionate about this? Where did this come from?" And so, as much as we talk about everything, I think we're much more socially conscious and volunteer oriented than like not. But we more so like gel on the data analytics piece and the analytical side. So that's just really surprising to me. Like, honestly, it's just like, wow. Like, we've never volunteered together. Like, I don't think, and that's another thing. You sought out volunteer experiences when you got to Minneapolis. I think my awareness as a volunteer, as a citizen of the community, probably didn't happen until I got to Delta. I feel like it was like shut out.
I remember that.
That's so interesting. So it's like you've always been this person, but we never talked about it. Probably until that point in Greece where you were like, wait, maybe something, and you were like, oh, I can talk to you about this kind of stuff, and then we started spitballing about like everything, like, you know, just racial issues and where our cultures are going and things like that. So that's just me just to say that's really interesting, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more. Like, I think we should volunteer together. Next time we come, maybe we can do like a volunteer event.
Oh, I'm so down.
That would be really
I'm so down.
Okay, putting a pin in it. Let's just remember that we're going to do a volunteer event, and if in a city near you, we'll probably either be here or Houston, depending. I don't know, but more to come. So tell me about Teach for America a little bit, because you took a little detour. You said you were interested in business. Yeah. You went into Teach for America, and I'm assuming there's personal and professional development in there. And so now that you're like almost a decade removed. I hate to date you, girl. You know, people.
I'm a couple years from a decade, so come on.
Then what would you say personal development looks like? And then how would you say that professional development helps you in your career today?
I didn't even realize how many transferable skills that I took with me moving from teaching to corporate America. A lot of my TFA 10 core members, 2010 core members, now I'm dating myself. But a lot of us have like gone to get MBAs, and like some have become teachers, have gone to med school, some have continued teaching. So I think when it comes to the personal development, I'll talk about Teach for America specifically in my experience, but we went through a training camp that was somewhere around 6 to 8 weeks. And then when we actually got to our city, it was consistent development, public speaking, like how to interact with people. I mean, these were little people, like these were younger people, but essentially you have to be able to connect and empathize and be able to showcase that, like, hey, I care about you to the point where I want you to learn, and then be able to diversify your teaching. Because not everyone's going to pick up on everything as fast. And like little things like that I didn't realize I was able to use when I got to corporate America. Like my public speaking skills, they need some work. But they probably need a lot more work if I hadn't taught every day in front of 30 to 45 kids on a consistent basis. Nice. If I wasn't able to say, like, change the verbiage or whatever the case may be for my audience. Okay, I'm talking to principals, now I'm talking to 11-year-olds. Like, how do I interact differently? Like, how do I pick up on cues, social cues, and things like that? So, it was consistent training we had. I don't even remember the cadence of it, but I want to say when we first started, it was maybe every couple of weeks. And then when we became our second year, it was a program in second year, I believe it went to every month. Okay. But then there was also a mentor-mentee relationship. So everything about it was consistent development. How do you hone your skills as a teacher? How do you just hone skills, period? And then because all of my friends were Teach for America people at that time in Houston, which, like, honestly, an amazing foundation of friends, amazing group of people, like, it was also relational built in.
Yeah.
So consistent connection building and information sharing, that is actually one thing that kudos to that group and to Teach America in general, is they don't want you to reinvent the wheel. That is one thing I learned that took away with me, like, why am I starting from scratch? But it really is, how do you share? How do you take what someone else has done and innovate it and make it usable for yourself in your classroom? The whole experience was amazing. Good and bad, ups and downs. People always ask me, when you came from teaching to corporate, like, what was the biggest difference? And of course, breaks. No summer vacation, like no spring break. But then also for me, it was, in teaching, the highs are so high. Like when you see a student get it, like it's been so long, but when you see a student get it, like the joy that I feel, like genuine, just like elation, like I'm so excited. But the lows are so lows. I remember a teacher friend, we were talking after a long hard day at work, and she was like, sometimes she would pull to the school, and before she can get out of her car, she would cry. Because it just pulls so much out of you, and you care so much, and it's like, you can't let this go. But I got to corporate America, and I was like, my bad days, I was like, this is easy. Like, this is all. But then the highs weren't as high, so I didn't feel as fulfilled when I had those accomplishments, so I had to like seek them elsewhere. But yeah.
As an impact-driven person and an impact-driven employee, I think that I'm hearing a lot more of like where your passion lies, and then because we're so cerebral about a lot of things, but it really is a pleasure to see you light up about talking about teaching in a way that I've never got a chance to see it, of course.
Yeah.
And I've also never gotten a chance to, we don't talk a lot about it. Like, I think we could probably share more stories about me also teaching at Covenant House and like what that feels like, because I honestly know what it feels like for that light bulb to click. And I think that's why I do what I do. Even if it doesn't make sense, I'm always chasing impact because I know what it feels like, and I know that I can't sacrifice that. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm curious, like in the beginning of your story, you talked about you decided to leave because you were doing the youth a disservice, right? And at some point you felt like you weren't at least providing as much value as you were before. So and I'm curious if you could paint the picture of what that environment looked like for you, because I know Teach for America puts you in like low socioeconomic schools, and then on a day-to-day, tell us a little bit more about the personal development from a pressure or an environmental standpoint.
So, I don't know why, the law of diminishing returns is what's coming to mind. So in my third year of teaching, I felt like my test scores were still pretty high. It wasn't that I felt like I was doing the youth a disservice quite yet, but I remember having conversations with so many teachers that had been there for 20, 30 years, and I saw it in their eyes. I saw the bitterness, and I saw how they talked about the students that I'm sure when they first started, they loved and they appreciated, and now it was just like, I'm getting this check so I can retire. So I would actually say that was probably the most impactful thing for me, like those teacher interactions, those old heads where they were trying to teach me something like, if you can get out now. And I won't say I regret it ever, but I do question, sometimes, like looking back, did I make the right decision? But it was more so that kind of pressure on myself, where I didn't want to do disservice on youth. It wasn't necessarily coming from the school district or Teach for America. It was more so, I think honestly, they would have kept me, like, because I was doing decent, right? They would have kept me like, oh, you don't love the kids? Keep going. And that's where I'm like, okay, this is where I draw the line for me. Because I don't want to look at the kids the way these other teachers are looking at the kids. So I would say it was less about pressure from any other outside source and more so for me, making a decision that I thought was healthy for myself and for the people around me.
Absolutely. And now it makes sense that if internally you lose that sense of empathy and excitement and passion for what you do, it doesn't matter how smart you are, or how well you know the curriculum, or how well you can get them to pass the test.
Yeah.
If I don't love you, then we're not going to connect. And I don't want to ever get to a place where I don't love you, or I'm not interested, or I come into work and I disdain your existence. So I get it.
Especially when it's like these kids, like, even if you can't feel it at that moment, they're looking to you for guidance. Yeah. And so if I lose this empathy, if I lose this care, this impactful career is no longer an impactful career. Yeah. And for me, I was doing it because of the impact. Mm-hmm. So it didn't make any sense for me to continue if I felt like I was gonna be scorned. Yeah. And so I wanted to get out before I got to that level. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, I feel like after doing so many stints in different, like, homeless shelter and things like that, my philosophy is, as, radical as it might sound, poor people can't help poor people. And not just financially poor, but spiritually poor people can't help poor people, especially if your cup is so empty and I just barely have some dust in mine. Like, it's not a productive. So as you explore that thought, and then even as sometimes when there's that did I do the right thing? I just want to be that thought on the left shoulder to be like, yeah, I think so. Because now that you're in corporate, and now that you are more so inclined to take part in self-care, and you're more financially stable than you were as a teacher, how do you imagine bringing that impact part of yourself into your job?
Ooh, that's a really good question. That's a good question, and I don't know if I have the perfect answer. What I will say is, so me and my best friend, we're currently working on a project, and one of the ways that we talk about, so me and her, both Nigerian Americans. I was born in New York. She was born in Nigeria, but moved here when she was pretty young. But we've talked about how even though we're Nigerian American, we have Black American friends, and we have Jamaican friends, and we have Liberian friends, and how do we connect? And one of the ways we thought about it is through food. And so I think that the emotional connection on how you make an impact is really important. And so through those conversations, we decided that we're going to start a business. And so the groundwork is not fully laid, so I don't want to go into too much detail. But we were so excited because we relate through food, and I feel like the Black diaspora relates through food. And it's like we think there's food deserts, and honestly, like when George Floyd was murdered, and I had to drive farther than I would like, not even that far. To go to a grocery store, and the North community in Minneapolis, like the closest Cub Foods was closed. So like when you think about transportation, like they can't get to a grocery store that easy, and so there were all these food drives and things like that. And now I feel like I'm kind of talking in circles, but either way, like through a lot of those conversations, we decided that we want to impact through food and community and connectedness. And so we're starting something off where we're both passionate about it, and we're again connecting with people that I feel like sometimes it's just so disconnected based off of culture, and it's like we have so many similarities. Like, how can we tie this together? I think we've talked about this so much. Like, you as a Black American, me as a Black American, but from Nigerian parents. Like, what are our similarities? Yeah, and we connected on so many different levels, and I feel like not everyone does that. And that's actually one of the things that I admire about us and our relationship, is that we so easily find our commonalities, and as opposed to our differences, and we seek those out, and we both value the connection. And so again, I feel like I'm talking in code. I haven't gone into much detail, but I'm really excited on the impact that can make for a community that we're working in.
Yeah, I know we don't know the business venture, so that's cool, but I don't think that you left enough out for that, so that we don't understand, because one, you're right, we do as the Black diaspora connect on food, right? So any initiative that brings us to the table with foods in mind, like even though you haven't shared much about the idea, I'm already envisioning. You know how I did 90% of Sunday dinner the other day? First time ever. I feel like even imagine that type of meal, the connectedness from creating a vegan meal that has so much flavor, and as an African American person, to cook something that is more cultural than in our community. I feel like most of the stuff that we did, like spicy cabbage,
mac and cheese,
curry potato, mac and cheese. I think like that is a dish that is a conversation piece in itself.
Yeah. And
then it allows us to sit and break bread together.
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned the food desert, the food scarcity aspect within low income communities. So being able to, as corporate citizens who have the resources, who have the skill, you know what I mean, to bring that to a community, whether it's in, you know, stores, whether it's in events, however you wanted to like wrap that up.
Yeah.
I can totally see how these concepts mesh, and then how we can bring it to those who don't have it.
Yeah.
And to bring it all back as a corporate employee, I feel like you have the luxury to now finance a project like this and the skill set to strategize a project like this and the resources and human capital to put something like this together in a way that if I were to like extrapolate your career from Teach for America, who knows what type of impact you would have been able to make from a teacher's perspective, but you're certainly making use of it with your thought leadership as it stands. Yeah. So I'm ready for you to pull the trigger, because you
I'll keep you updated, but I'm excited. I'm really excited about it, and I 100% agree. Like when it comes to human capital, when it comes to experience, when it comes to just financial security, like spending the money that I might have to spend now on this venture, I'd have been extremely scared, nervous to take anything out of my account, because my financial life has not been stable. And I think that's a lot of like talking to a lot of my friends who've had a lot of the same experiences. So I felt like I needed to be in a position, which you don't have to be, but I felt like I needed to be in a position where it's like, okay, you know what? I can take a hit here. I can take a hit there. I can sacrifice here or there. And then also with everything that's been going on, I felt like I'm willing to sacrifice that much more. Step out of the box that much more, push myself that much more, and then having the backing of friends who are also in those more stable emotional, financial positions, like knowing that I had that support system, which a lot of people don't have. And sometimes I gotta remind myself of that, but yes, in a much better place doing it now than I have been at any other point in my career.
That's beautiful. You know, I kind of want to get into the fact that so I don't even, you know, a lot of my friends are African American in a sense. They're either from Ghana, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and they're American, right? But so often we connect so well that the differences that I find with my other friends don't even exist. Like even when I say, like, I might say my African friends, and then I go, oh yeah, you know, Agu is Nigerian. So I'm somewhere in the realm of just wondering how you, and because you were born in America, I'm assuming a lot. So as I say the question out loud, how did you become so passionate about the African American experience from a non-Native African perspective? How did you become so concerned about that? And then where does that fit within like your story, and how does it differ from your circle? I know it might be a loaded question.
Really good question. So I was Nigerian first. I grew up in a Nigerian household. My parents spoke Yoruba. I went to Nigerian church. But I remember as being a kid, like it's wild. Like being in elementary school, I looked for the black people, not the Nigerians, the black people. So I looked for the commonality of like, okay, so the darker, like the people with the dark skin, they can relate to me in whatever way, in whatever capacity. As an 8-year-old, I didn't know what I was doing. It wasn't intentional, but there was some kind of connectedness, right, that I knew that I felt. And so like when I was speaking to these Black American kids who had grown up in Black American households, not necessarily Nigerian households, like it didn't feel any different than when I was connecting with my Nigerian friends at church. And so I think the more connectedness you feel and the more you can relate, empathize, hang out with, like all that fun stuff, the like the less borders, boundaries there are, and so I didn't see differences. It's wild to say, but like again, I was Nigerian first, then I was black next, and all the black people were the same to me. I didn't speak Yoruba, so when I went to school, it was like, okay, the black people, okay, cool, Amanda. Like, well, whatever, you know, like, okay, we're like that was my crew. And I think also because I will say that I grew up in an area that was majority white, and so they are way closer to me than these people over there. And so and then I would also say large population of my friends when I was younger, the Nigerian Americans were considered themselves black. Like it, and I don't know if I'm explaining this the way that I want to, but it's so much easier to see blackness than it is to see Nigerian, to see blackness than it is to see Jamaican or whatever the case may be. And so that was what I used to create my circle as even a child, and it has continued since. And so I think like similar to us, like I look at the similarities. I remember going to UGA and like the black community is mixed. You had the ASU, the African Student Union, you had the BSU, the Black Student Union, but like my friends were just, I hung with black people. Yeah. They were Jamaican, they were Black American, they were Nigerian, they were black. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, so let me know.
Absolutely are. Yeah. You absolutely are. To start here, I want to just say like, the awareness that we are all black. Yeah. It's not, I wish it was so much more prevalent among all of us. Yeah. And that there wasn't so much differentiation between us, because that right there, I feel like where it comes from, and correct me if I'm wrong or add anything that I'm missing, it sounds like you grew up with a foundation as a Nigerian woman. You had the tradition, you had the spiritual foundation, and even the familial sense of it being a Nigerian woman. And then you were socialized as an African American kid, or just a black kid, in the way that it sounds like maybe there's nuance in the way that you were raised, to that there was no differentiation that we're Nigerian and they're black, because what happened when you went into school, you just identified with, one, skin color, and then two, I'm sure the dialect and the values came up somewhere in there. I'm sure. So it all makes sense. I feel like, and this is more of a comment, so tell me what you think, because I think I have more conversations with first generation African immigrants who were born in Africa, maybe came over in their teens or younger years, and they grew up with the sense that, okay, I'm African, they're black. And I think there was a pinnacle moment in a lot of my friends' lives where they're like, oh, I'm black too, or at least they see me as black.
I was gonna say that's what it is. That's what I've noticed, at least, because majority of my first generation friends are very similar to me, where it's like they either grew up in black communities, so it's like, okay, we just all black, or whatever the case may be, or they grew up in majority white communities and it was like, okay, so who do I identify with most? The black people. But I do think that I forgot where I was going.
That pinnacle moment where you realize you're black.
Yeah, so like I have a couple of friends that like got here a little bit later, and they had those moments where it was like, yo, it doesn't really matter how I identify myself. I can still identify in my home or my mind as Nigerian first or Jamaican first, but everybody else is looking at you like you're black. So you can see the differences, you can point the differences, you can try to distinguish yourself, and that's great if you want to distinguish yourself and say like, hey, you know what, I'm proud to be Nigerian. But when they pull you over, or when they see you in line at the grocery store, all they see is blackness. Yeah. And I do think that is a life changer. It's a mindset shift. And it definitely plays into how you walk around, like how you see the world, like who do you identify with? Because you're probably gonna still identify more with the Black Americans, because that's how the world is treating you as such, than maybe the white people across the street. And I feel like whenever, like having these conversations with some of my friends that have gotten here a little bit later, I think the latest that I would say most of my friends have gotten here is like middle school. Yeah. But even then, it's like, it's interesting to hear them talk about their mindset shifts and how they just identify as just sometimes black first, sometimes, and then Nigerian.
That's interesting. So
they wouldn't say it like that. They would never actually admit that. But in reality, their experiences, like they will, as they share, it's like, okay, yeah, you're black. Like,
that's helpful to know. Yeah. Well, what you just helped me understand is, I know what I know because I'm so intimate with my friends. Mm-hmm. And maybe the African people that I don't know, it might seem like they don't know that they're black, but maybe they just want to allow themselves to even come to like have that type of open discussion. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious what you think about. So a lot of people's point of reference of like, oh, I'm black, sometimes hinges on some type of traumatic event, like, oh, somebody pulled me over, or I experienced racism for the first time. And I don't think, hey, that's gonna happen, and for those who that takes for them to come over to the fact that we are all black, mm-hmm. Hey, that's your journey. Yeah. But for the people who don't have to experience something so traumatic, what do you think would be a good way to introduce us all, bring us all to the table, and help us have that conversation without it being so traumatic? Or do you feel like it needs to be something traumatic?
That is a great question. Honestly, I don't think I've had a conversation with someone and it not been a traumatic experience. Okay. So I would love to say like it doesn't have to be traumatic, and I think it takes a lot of growth and empathy and being able to like listen, being open-minded. And I'd love to say that I think that majority of humans are like that, but mm-hmm. I don't. I think that it takes experience, and sometimes those hard experiences like open your eyes to see how people see you, to be able to say like, you know what, like I was Nigerian, I thought I was different, but when that cop stopped me and he looked at me like he was like I was a regular Black American, it's like now I see what they go through, you know, and it's like it merges those experiences like the Black American and now for example, Nigerian American, whatever the case may be, until they look at your name and maybe question, okay, so is this person African? But yeah, so I would love to say that it's just conversations, mm-hmm. and just like hanging out with the other side. Yes. But I sometimes feel like it really is like being forced to be put in the other person's shoes, and not in a positive way. Not in a positive way. Yeah.
Has to be jarring. Has to be a bop on top of the head. Mm-hmm. Mm.
Mm-hmm. I also will say this one thing, and I hate to generalize, and so I'm going to try not to, but I would say being brought to the table, and I think I don't want to say both sides, but both sides. I think like Black Americans and then like either African, Caribbean, whatever the case may be, immigrants, mm-hmm. like I also think they distinguish themselves because of lack of acceptance on both sides. Mm-hmm. And so like if in this perfect world, in this utopia, like we were having these conversations, or we were working towards a way to kind of bridge that gap without these jarring experiences, it really would be open up your mind, open up your ears, open up your heart to the other side. Yeah. As simple as that. As simple as that sounds. Yeah.
Over a plate of food.
Honestly, I didn't say it, but in my mind, I was thinking over some dinner, some efo, some Nigerian food, jollof fries with some fried chicken, mac and cheese, collard greens, like mix those cultures together. Have some curry goat, whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm here with it. So Agu, you are the epitome of a woman who you're not your career. You're not just your job. You're so much more than that. And in this whole overlap of work and play, I get to enjoy your business side mm-hmm. in all of our friendship conversations.
Yeah.
And that's what allows me to even be able to talk to you about my entrepreneurial endeavors without you being like, without there being any type of differentiation. And so, because I know that part of you, mm-hmm. I guess I benefit from just that side of both being inside of you. I don't know if that's making any sense, but I'm curious to know, for your coworkers who don't know this side of you, right? How do you bring your personal self to the corporate American space? How does all this stuff fit within? And if you could, tell us what you do and give us a day in the life. I know, just a bit.
So the first question, how do I bring my personal self? That's a hard question for me because I've actually struggled with this. I've actually struggled with bringing myself to work and feeling I would be accepted for who I am. I mean, the biggest thing is I'm an introvert, and one of the things that I struggled with coming to Target is it was not an introvert friendly environment. And so it was very much so the extroverts, like who can socialize and be the loudest and the most heard, who can just talk about anything, anytime. And I was like very much like analytical. I like to think through my questions, and I'm not gonna be the person like waving my hand to talk in a meeting. And so that was really hard for me. I would say it's been multiple teams accepting me, multiple teams pushing me to be better, mentors that have just said, Agu, what you're doing, like that validation. I hate to say it, but I need that validation. And so like on my current team, I bring up issues that I would have felt a lot more uncomfortable bringing up a few years back. So I mean, growth in multiple aspects. But for example, just like this right here, social justice. I would have felt probably a little, when I say a lot uncomfortable talking about this when I first got to Target. Like, I'm the only Black person on the team. Should I be talking about this? But now I bring really my full self to work. Like, I struggle with things like depression. And so, like, I'll tell my boss, you know what, I'm not having a good day. I'm going to be off today. So it's little things like that, being vulnerable, being open, allowing my boss, my coworkers to show me that they can't handle it or they can't accept me, whatever the case may be, before I decide to pull back. So just, I don't even know if that's a great answer, but just literally just like putting it on the table, showing up how I show up, in whatever mindset that I'm showing up in, and allowing, like showing that, vocalizing that, and then allowing other people to kind of decide how they want to relate to me in that way. But yeah, I would say my mentors have done an amazing job, like calling out my strengths, building up that confidence, helping me realize like what I have to bring to the table. And that's taken a lot of work. But that validation, I think, is key for me. And I would say, like, even the last 2 years, I had a mentor that was in the field, and our conversations were monthly, work related, and it turned into just development conversations. Like, not intentionally, it just turned into, okay, so what do you do with your career? Why? How? When? What? And I remember, like, at first it's kind of just like, okay, I gotta now be prepared for an interview every month. But like, it turned conversational, and he actually moved to headquarters. And so he was a VP in the field. He moved to headquarters about a year ago, and happened to be one of the VPs on my team. And it was like that. It was this perfect connection where you were someone who knew Target because you worked at Target, but in a very different area. You normally mentored senior directors, and I was a couple levels down from that, and you gave me the time and the energy, which I so appreciated. And then when he came to headquarters, he became my advocate. He became my advocate. I would like talk to this person, do this, and again, it's that consistent validation, that show support that has helped me, like, even just open my mind to things like starting a business outside of Target. So am I answering your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It makes so much sense that God would place someone in your life that gives you that validation on a professional level, because you are also the epitome of the example that, one, you have to do your job well, and then they'll be able to listen to you in other realms, right? And because you can do forecasting and in-stocks and inventory, because we haven't even talked about what you do. We're going to have to do a part two.
Okay.
But because you know inventory, in-stocks, markdown, sales, all of those things, we haven't, that's not even who you are. And I think you've given yourself, you know, in your journey of being an introvert, you've given yourself time to just get really good at your craft, and that's your tool. And so now that that's your tool, I think, and I say this a lot, I say this for some people, and I recognize this, that now you've gotten your tool down pat. You know your skill, you have your strength, you can get paid as much as you want for that.
Yeah.
But I think the validation that is pulling your thoughts out is what you really are going to make a difference with.
Yeah.
Because you do your job well, you know, hands behind your back. But it's your thoughts and the things that you're even trying to weave together, these concepts that I have all the time, but I wish they would have more incorporated. Because I left corporate, I'm like, y'all gonna have to get that from somebody else. And I just feel like having someone like you as an employee who is, one, tapping into their strengths and then tapping into their values at a company like Target, where they appreciate that type of opinion, and you do your job well, so you make the company money. It's a win-win, bottom line, and social justice. I think that everything is culminating in your life, and it's, as I hear more about your story in corporate, it makes me appreciate, you know, everyone's journey. Like, I understand the value of the environment that you're in is what's going to make you the best diamond that you're going to be.
Oh, hands down.
And I think I see you literally, like, you know, growing, but I can only imagine what your coworkers are being able to see, because being able to be validated and have a day when you're like, hey, I just need to take a mental day. And Target is the environment that allows you to have mental days, but you've also had the people to give you the voice and to say that. Yeah. So I just think that's really, really, really awesome. So I'm curious, before we get out of here, there's a girl out here who has not made it in corporate America. Maybe she's still at Teach for America, and maybe she just doesn't necessarily know what she's going to do next. Who is that person that you want to speak to most, and what would you tell them? At which part of your journey would you like to reach out to?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say, it's that transition phase. So I think I heard two parts to your question. Like, what do I want to say to this person, and like at what point in time in their journey would I want to speak to them? So that transition, like when you're thinking about leaving Teach for America, and you're thinking about, okay, so I'm gonna go somewhere, I don't know where, I don't know what, I just know that, or even if it's not Teach for America, whatever the career choice, where it's like, I know that this is not it. This is not it for me. I'm not being fulfilled emotionally, mentally. I'm not being challenged in whatever capacity that you're trying to be challenged. Or just maybe you're just burnt out. And it's like, you know what, the challenge is not where I want to be right now. I say take the time and the energy and the effort to research, to look. I mean, it sounds so like almost fluffy, but genuinely, like look inwardly, like what actually fulfills you. And if you have support, if you have any kind of familial help, a friend that'll, like, honestly, I say take the step. Because sometimes you need to like jump off that cliff before you can realize, like, oh, I can fly. I know that sounds so like, but genuinely, like, I mean, I pivoted like hard to something, and I mean, I know you haven't given yourself enough accolades, but I am beyond proud of the journey that you've taken, and you have done it a couple of times where you just stepped off and said, you know what, I know I'm gonna land. I know I'm gonna land on my feet, and I think that is always gonna be the case if you continue to learn and to grow and to put in that energy to find fulfillment, and to seek it like intentionally, and yeah. So it's like that transition point where it's like, girl, just go, do it. Don't get me wrong. You still gotta like do the work. But yeah, take the journey. Like jump off the cliff. You'll land on your feet. Do something big. Do something different. And it's always easier to do it when you're younger. It is. I think about where I am now, and if I was a teacher, I would hate to say it, but teaching is consistent. it's a constant paycheck. You know what you're gonna. Okay, with them kids, you don't know what you're gonna get every day, but you have an idea. You know what's under the umbrella. And at 25, I was like, I can't do it, and I was quitting no matter what, job or no job. I just knew that wasn't right for me, and I've seen so many other people just do huge pivots in their career and their path and their journey, and people who did teach America that thought they were going to do med school and decided not to. They decided to continue on their teaching journey. So there's just so many ways like life can take you. You got to make the decisions that are right for you, and if that means something big and scary, if you have the support, not even if you have the support, if you can do it, if you can push yourself to do it, just do it.
Thank you so much. That is literally
a lot of words to say what Nike said. Just do it.
Right? No, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Their branding is amazing because I find myself just wanting to be like, just do it all the time. But thank you so much for sitting with me and having this conversation, y'all. I gotta get Agu to the airport because she literally dedicated this hour to me, and I said I was gonna make the most of it. So thank you again. Thank you guys for listening to the Work and Play podcast. And as Agu said, just do it. If there's something that you're considering, or if you're at a crossroads in your life, then listen to your heart. Do your evaluation. It's not fluff. And just do it.
Yeah.
See y'all later, guys. Peace.